Hey guys, and my name is Eric Christian. Some of you know me, some of you don't, and that's okay. Let's be friends. Hey, one of the things I love teaching about, just a passion of mine, it's a huge desire, is leadership. Because I believe that we are all leaders. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're out running a Fortune 500 company, whether you are a teacher, a police officer, a fireman, a lawyer, a doctor, it doesn't matter. We are all leaders. If nothing else, we are leading ourselves. And so I want to start a new leadership podcast. And this leadership podcast will launch or come about the last Thursday of every month. And excited to see where this goes. I want to add value to you guys. I want to sit here and build leaders with purpose. I think all too often, men and women, we are leaders, but we don't know our purpose. We don't know where we're going. In Proverbs, there's 31 of them. I encourage us to read one a day. We'll get a little more smart if we do. But in Proverbs, it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think we can take the word people and interchange that with business, church, relationships, marriage. Where there is no vision, those things can perish. And so I want these leadership podcasts to be one that it spurs on our purpose, where we're going, and it builds each other up. A little bit about me. I was in the construction business for about 15 years. Can you believe it? That's why the word build is always in my tagline, building leaders with a purpose. I'll get the word build in there however I can. I worked my way up in the field. I was with the same company for those years, and I worked my way up. And the last 4 or so years that I was at the company, I was the vice president, and I had this great, fortunate, humble, grateful to where those last 4 years took me. I was able to launch 2 new divisions off of our company, open up a satellite office within the state of Alabama, and really just watch the company grow from a handful of employees to 50 and 60 employees. And it was just this great treasure of mine to build the leaders within our company, to build those leaders with purpose so that they went and did this amazing job with whatever they were doing, whether it was pushing a broom, building a building, or just talking with our clients. But in doing so, they were doing it with a passion. And in turn, we had these raving fans, as Kim Blanchard would say. We had these clients that just were shouting from the rooftop about our company, and that's how we got our business. So I'm passionate about leadership, and so now I took a leap of faith, and I am I'm doing leadership consulting, business consulting, full time. Just have this great privilege and this journey, this adventure that I'm on to come alongside startup companies and just get in the ditches with them, roll up my sleeves, and do this together. It takes a tribe, it takes a village. And I want to do this, via social media. I want to come alongside you and help you grow the business from wherever you are. Let's try to grow it. Let's build the people within the company to become better, to be the best version of themselves, so that you can have the best company that you desire as well. I think one of the things that we have to look at when it comes to leadership, and I want to start our first leadership podcast with this. We need to take control of our thoughts. Why? Because our thoughts lead to choices, and those choices to actions. And if we think it through a little bit enough, those actions and choices, eventually they have results. I mean, if you go out and rob enough banks, you're going to get put in jail eventually. That'll be a result of that. But if we create and have enough of these results, then that creates a culture. So right off the bat, my question to all of us, what is the culture that you're aiming for, that you're longing for yourself and within your company? But for us to get to that culture, it all starts with our thought process. So this first leadership podcast, I want us to dive in to what does it mean to take control of our thoughts. Hey, if you're like me, you talk to yourself all the time. And we do. One of the greatest things that we have is our self-talk. But the flip side of that, for some of us, it can be the worst thing as well. And so is self-talk important? Yes, it is so. It's vitally important. And it's so important that we take control of our self-thought. And why? I think there are three reasons why we need to take control of our self-talk. The first one is it can limit our growth and it controls our lives. So as we're walking through this journey, we need to remember that our self-talk, it can limit the growth. It can limit the potential, not just in our business, but in our lives, in our marriage, in our relationships. And it controls, it orients, it dictates where we go in our life. Have you ever been around people that you long to be around? Maybe it's their smile, it's their personality, it's just their joy in life, and you just want to, you're a puppy dog, you're wagging your tail, and you just want to follow them. And then we have those that we don't want to get near. They're complaining all of the time, they're disgruntled, they're not happy, there's no joy. And those people we just want to run away from. And I don't want us to be that person. I don't want us to be the person that people are running away from. I want us to be the people that people are running towards. Why? Because we're adding value to them. We're encouraging them. We are empowering them to be the best version that they can be. Number two, the reason we have to take control of our self-talk is because it can feed guilt and self-condemnation. If we don't take control of our negative self-talk, it will create this guilt and shame and self-condemnation. We'll start saying phrases, I'm not good enough. We'll start saying phrases, well, I don't deserve, or you don't know my past. And I just want to pause right here and say that our past, your past, does not define your future. Okay, you've been bankrupt twice, and you've started 3 startups and they fail. That does not define who you are. There is no failure, only feedback. And finally, oftentimes our self-talk, it has no truth. It has zero truth. And it's so important that we test and we're making sure that our self-talk, what we're thinking, is it true or is it not? Because oftentimes it's not. There's a phrase out there, more than often, more than not, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And so we just have to remember that. And so we have to take control of our self-talk. And you may be asking the question, but why? Why take control of it? Why is it so important? It's so important, so much so that researchers did some research about this, and they came to show that we produce almost 45,000 thoughts a day. They say we average between 42,000 and 45,000 thoughts a day. I don't know about you, but I can't even comprehend that. I can't even really comprehend that many thoughts. But we do. But the sad part is in that research, they gather the research and it indicates that 70% of those thoughts are negative. So think about 45,000 thoughts, but 70% are negative. That's not good. And that's why it's so important that we take control of our self-talk and our thought process, and we have to kind of take a shift. We have to change gears in how we're thinking through things. Because if we're not, we're going to be the sad, we're going to be the lonely people out there. And no one's going to want to follow that. And you may be asking the question, well, how do we get rid of these negative thoughts that we are experiencing? And there's 3 ways. Number 1 is we have to slowly begin to get rid of those negative thoughts. And I use the word slowly because it takes time. It's a process. Think about it. If you have 45,000 thoughts a day, just think about over a week, a month, but think about your lifetime. If you've been thinking these same negative thoughts for your lifetime, it's going to take a little bit to get rid of that, to start replacing it. And so I say the word slowly to take some pressure off. Don't try to go home tonight and write down all your negative thoughts and then somehow I'm going to get rid of all of them. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't work that way. So just slowly begin, day by day, hour by hour, week by week, get rid of those negative thoughts. And then before you know it, they're not going to be there. You're not going to have as many. But just take some time, pressure off, and let it be a journey, an adventure. The second thing is do not accept everything as a fact. Test it. Everything that we're thinking is not true. Maybe we're thinking about things in the future, things that have not even happened. We're thinking hypotheticals. You know how we get ourselves all worked up over things that more than likely don't come true. Research even shows on that 80% of those thoughts that we're thinking about the what ifs in the future, 80% of those never come true. So we're spending 80% of our time on things that we could be spending on more positive, more uplifting thoughts and processes. So oftentimes what we're thinking is not true. So we have to test those. Make sure that what we're thinking is true. And finally, test the reality of your thoughts by saying them out loud. There's just something about when we have a thought, that's one thing. But when we test the validity of it by saying it out loud, that's where the power comes in, and that's where we can change. Because when we say things out loud, that's when we start hearing it, and we go, oh, well, that's not true. That's not reality. And then we can slowly get rid of those thoughts. So I encourage us, if you have those thoughts, say them out loud. Test them by saying them out loud. You may have to go to a closet, do it in your car, do it in the bathroom where others can't hear or see it. We don't want them thinking we're crazy, but say them out loud. And I think if we can start doing these three things, it's going to take us from 70% negative, maybe down to 60 to 50 to 40. And before you know it, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, we're going to be in a much more positive place. Why? Because we're slowly taking our time, sifting through and getting rid of these negative thoughts. And you may be wondering, but I hear all of that, but where do they come from? Where do these negative thoughts even stem? Where are they birthed out of? And I think that's a great question, because if we know the answer to that, then it really helps identify, explain why we have these negative thoughts. I think there are three areas, three ways that we get our negative thoughts, where they come from. The first is it's our family roles. Our family roles. You know, growing up, I'm sure we all had our task list. Maybe we had our chores, but I think it also it's in how we saw, how we viewed, how we looked at maybe our parents. Maybe you had a mom that was really just strong-willed, and maybe you had more of a passive dad, or maybe it was the opposite of that. Maybe your parents were divorced and you lived with one more than the other. Or maybe you were raised and you grew up with your grandparents. And so you saw their roles and how they interacted, how they did life, how they, what they did in their marriage or relationship, or how they ran the household, how they ran their life. And so you were viewing, as we're growing up, we're viewing these different roles. And so as we get older, we take on those. We're learning those by the environment that we're in. And so before you know it, we're doing the things that maybe we said we didn't want to do. Maybe we're saying, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like my dad. And next thing you know, we're saying things and we're phrases and we're doing things that they did. And we're like, no! And so it's the roles. And so maybe you have these thoughts that maybe they're not true, because it's just how we saw the roles. The second thing, it's our family relationships. Now, the one thing that we can't change, it's our family. We were born into the family that we were born into. It is what it is. We have that. We can't change that. But what we can change, if there's any negative phrases, words that were spoken over us or to us in these family relationships, we can slowly get rid of those. Maybe you grew up in a household and your parents just said, "Oh, you're not going to be, you're not going to amount to anything. You're not going to be good at anything. You're not going to go to college. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not athletic enough. Why don't you keep trying out for basketball?" And they just spoke some negative words over you. Maybe you had an aunt or uncle or maybe even grandparents or cousins that maybe when you go to the Thanksgiving dinners or Christmas gatherings, maybe they said things over you that were negative or not true. And maybe you bought into that lie. Maybe you allow those whispers to come in and your self-talk, we start believing those. And we didn't know to test them. We didn't know how to test them. And so I want us to look at, maybe there were some phrases or words that were spoken over you that aren't true that we have to get rid of with that. And then finally, it's our family influences. There are always those family members that had some influence over us. It could have been our parents. It could have been someone else in our family, but maybe good or bad, they influenced us in a way that maybe is not right. It's not true. And so I need us to start looking at that and asking, is that true? And I think if we start doing these practices day in and day out and just be consistent with it, I really do believe that those 45,000 thoughts we're thinking, though now it may be 80% negative, but I want us to get it down to 70 to 60, and it takes time. If a year from now, if we're down from 75% negative to 70, we've made progress. And let's celebrate. Let's come together and say, I'm getting better with my thought process. So I want to leave us with two questions. These are some questions, some challenges as we go out for the next month. But the first question here, what are some beliefs that generate your self-talk? What are some beliefs, or what are some of your beliefs that generate your self-talk? What are some of those beliefs from our family, from our friends, that's generating our self-talk? What are those? And then finally, what other words could you use in place of should? How often are we saying the phrase, well, I should do, or I should be, or what if I just would have done this, and I should have been here, and I should have said this or done that. But I think often that word should, it kind of creeps in guilt and self-condemnation. And it's that self-talk, shoulda, coulda, woulda. And so what words can we kind of put in place of should to help with our guilt and self-condemnation? Guys, I'm so passionate that we create a culture that's leaving behind a life of significance, different than success. But I think in order to do this, we have to start with our thought process. It has to start with our thinking. So I hope you take these little bit of information, hopefully a couple of wisdom nuggets, go put it into practice, and let's come back next month and see if we're a little more joyful, a little more happy, and taking more control of our self-thoughts. Until next month, hope you have a great day.